I have reason to believe that there is a larger than necessary demographic of lifters who do not get it, right? And by get it, I'm not talking about working out. I'm not talking about calories. I'm talking about a certain guttural kind of response that knowing a wild set is coming kind of just brings up. You know, it's not exactly like from my stomach or like I say it's from my heart either, but it's somewhere in this kind of, cavity of things. There must be some, unrecognized organ that is, not really brought up in scientific literature that only makes itself known when you're about to wreck a crazy set of incline dumbbell. And I can feel mine going now. But I was just having a talk with Mark yesterday when he was at the gym and we were doing forearms together. And yeah, I mean, I'm just like, he was talking how he wants to get some more freaking mass onto his frame. And, I was looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, shit, man, we're getting close. Like, I know it's kind of a Sisyphus sort of thing to think about the working out where it's like a never ending cycle. And, everybody loves talking about, I'm never satisfied. I mean, I've heard these kind of like motivational sort of videos said before, and they're kind of hyped up. So I know it's not like exactly what these guys are really thinking, but I mean, it'll come to the point where I'm hearing these guys who like totally look like freaking beasts, but they're putting themselves in a weird headspace because they're saying like, I'm always just looking for flaws that I can improve on. I'm always looking for the downside. I'm always looking for my weaknesses. And I get the logic. It's like a highly competitive, like I need everything to be perfect kind of idea, which, I mean, yeah, depending on the guy, but I think it's a little nitpicky, like there's a certain kind of back and forth of really anything, any kind of success, be it the working out, be it like, any kind of job or career or whatever. Like this is something I'll hear like a lot of hormozy kind of guys bring up. Not a lot, but like sometimes I'll hear them say this sort of thing where it's like, if you spend your whole time or a whole portion of time just purely focusing on like improvement and not, getting to enjoy what you've worked towards, then where's the balance, right? Because you're never going to get to enjoy it. It's like a dude who goes like investment banker style and then he's working 20-hour or like crazy 80-hour weeks his whole like into retirement, like 60, 70 years old, and then he says, okay, and let's say the guy has like freaking hundreds of millions of dollars and he's like, all right, now I can relax. What do you just did it. Like your whole life just kind of passed you by. You've got all this shit, but you don't get to enjoy it as much as you would have, right? But then if you never lock in, then you never get to a point where you can look back and say, okay, I made some shit happen. So it's like this middle ground. And the idea of like, oh, I look like shit, and it's like this kind of body dysmorphic approach of when you're looking at yourself in the mirror and like, oh man, my triceps aren't where I want them to be. And it's a guy who's literally diced, and then he pokes at his stomach and goes, man, I'm so fucking fat. Like every pose he hits is nuts, but it's always just like turning it into just this negative. And the point of it is to like motivate himself. It's like, okay, I want to work on this, so I'm going to highlight what I want to work on. But when I see guys talk like that, it just kind of turns me off. Like I think you can work on yourself and like understand that the process of doing it is something to enjoy at the same time, because it's not like your life isn't a problem to solve. It's like a thing to enjoy, and the process of improving it is just kind of a matter of course. So all that's to say is, don't look at maybe if you've got a bit too much body fat, or if you don't feel like you're big enough or as big as you want to be. I would say, and this is coming from me opinionated, I would say, don't look at that as though it's like, oh man, I'm so fucking screwed. Like, just look at it as kind of more of a challenge, like more of an opportunity to improve. And if you've got that headspace, and I know it's not easy, like I couldn't even, I can't put myself in the place of somebody who's like 300 pounds aiming for like a over 100 pound of body fat loss kind of transformation. I haven't lived it, right? But I could imagine it can get tiresome. I mean, I lose maybe what, like 50, probably just like somewhere in the tens, like, 11, 12, whatever kind of pounds of body fat in a few months. And, that's pretty quick. That's not too tricky for me. But to do that basically on repeat for a year and a half, 2 years, 3 years, however long it takes, yeah, man, I can see how that can get a bit freaking tiresome, But that's where I just have to imagine you need to get in the headspace of like, all right, I'm making the progress that I want to make. And that's enough to kind of keep you satisfied to keep going in the moment, just knowing that what you're doing is working towards kind of your greater end goal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I could not imagine someone coming in and having a good workout and just feeling good if their whole prep talk before coming in is just like the meanest. You would never say that to anybody else. So what makes you think that that's a good idea to, kind of talk to yourself internally? Like it's kind of a you're your own worst critic sort of situation. So I'm not saying that's like crazy prevalent with everyone, but if you ever catch yourself in that headspace, I would at least recommend a little bit of reflection of thinking, okay, should I really be talking like this? So if that spoke to any of you guys specifically, then I'm sure you can kind of get what I'm getting after, And usually when I say heavier, that really does just mean a combination. Heavier stuff in the beginning, lighter squeezing stuff later, kind of as more of a finisher, right? But like, this is something which I get the logic, because it's like setting a precedent of a rule of working out that is actually like pretty legit, and saying that you should do multiple different movements per workout so that you change it up, you're hitting the muscle in different ways, and your workouts don't get stale, and you don't give yourself the same stimulation lift after lift after lift. You're changing it up. And I like that. It's a good rule, right? I think we can all agree. But that doesn't mean that you can't have a day that's just a little simpler, Like, I think there have probably been, given how many people work out and how many days they still, kind of, like, one person working out is going to account for thousands of workouts if the guy works out for, X years. So, I feel like there's been millions of lifts that were potentially a little subpar because maybe the guy started on incline Smith or like incline dumbbell or cable press. He started on a movement, said, wow, this feels really good. And instead of just staying there and like making use of the fact that he was in the zone on that one piece, he just left. He did 2 sets and he said, okay, I did 2 really good sets there. They felt really good. I'm going to do something else now, just, because that's what you do, right? And that's not it's just a closed mentality, I've had not like hundreds, but I've had like probably tens of lifts. Now, obviously that's not a lot, that are just 2 movements, sometimes even 1 if it's a simpler body part. I've had arm days where it was, for bis and tris, 2 movements. Dumbbell, straight, regular ass dumbbell curls, nothing special about it. Heavy, 10-ish failure, and then just gradually work my way down the rack because I get weaker after every set. And just a bunch of heavy ass push downs. Like no overhead stretch, no light squeeze burn. But for that day, for that lift, it was a good workout. I'm going to do something else the next week, or the next, half week, if you're doing more of a, like what we should be doing, I feel, is kind of a twice a week body part kind of frequency, But the idea that there is only one way to do it, and that to break off from that pattern is cataclysmic, and right? You ever hear of sheep mentality? Not cool. Try this stuff out for your own, or for yourself, and see what works. So that's what I'm going to do today. Obviously, I've got the hundreds of chest days to look back on, kind of just historically, and judge what movements I think are going to be good, and what order, and what kind of combination. But, apart from that, I'm going into the gym. I've never been this exact version of myself, right? I've never woke up on July 9th. Is it the 19th today? Yeah, I've never woke up on July 19th, 2025, ever. This is the first time that I've ever done that. So there is a value, I feel, to take an every day like that. It's a totally new day. You're a totally new dude. There's room to, kind of play around with it, right? You're supposed to be in control of everything, at least, you know, related to what you do. So just keep your hands empty, right? Don't stack all your eggs in one basket, in the sense of just doing the same thing that you know kind of has been working before. Because sure, it's a safe place. You know that this chest day your dad taught you in the 80s is good, and you know you've been doing it for a long time. Are you missing out on, you know, something new? And if you're not, and you try something new and you don't like it, then that's just even more reason to keep doing what you've been doing, because it works. So it's a little bit of maybe a confirmation bias on what I'm saying there. But regardless of approach, 45 minutes after set number 1, that's kind of an estimation, I will be as pumped as possible. Yeah, my chest feels rather freaking inflated. That was a very good chest day. And really, that's what I'm aiming for, right? It's not just because being super pumped in the gym means that your workout was, you know, top tier awesome. But if everything in and out of the gym for your lift was set up accordingly, then you will be super pumped, because you'll be well fed. In a bulking context, you'll be all carbed up and full of, you know, just full of glycogen. If you're fully hydrated, you're gonna have more than enough fluids to work with to actually draw from to pump up a certain muscle group, right? It's not like you just get pumped up from thin air. It's coming from, you know, pretty much evenly distributed fluids across the rest of your build. And if you go nuts on a set-by-set basis, at least on average, you're gonna end up, I mean, just friggin', you know, swollen like a damn tomato, right? So that's it's more so that a pump is a consequence of an awesome lift that's going to result in progress or muscle maintenance while you get leaner, which is still progress, just in a slightly different kind of way, you know? So, and that's not even to mention like the sarcoplasmic stretch effect of whatever. Go nuts. And I feel like that was I can leave feeling good. That's all I gotta say there. I used to think, okay, if, so at the time of me like doing my gym research of what my lift should look like and, you know, how many reps and how many sets, the general consensus that I was seeing, you know, across different videos and, you know, guides and statements and everything else was about 25 sets per week. So if you hit everything twice a week, 12 sets of chest, lift, 12 sets of chest again. You know, that was kind of the general like nomenclature. So at first I hear that and I'm like, okay, if 25 is good, 50 is twice as good. And I did the same thing with protein. Like there was I've got some days tracked where I think I had like 350 grams of protein daily. And at the time, you know, I'm like a 180 pounder. So totally unnecessary amounts, but it's, if it works, it works, you know? So just a lot of things to kind of consider. Ooh, but let's just continue in the car. Try to highlight any main points that at least, you know, I can say, you know, kind of my take on. Mixing water with your motherboard. Let's just say it's not an awesome combination, but mixing water with your workout, and I'm talking making sure you're totally maximized fluid-wise. You got your gallon jug on you at least most of the time, right? That's my EDC, either a just a regular spring water bottle or an emptied out, you know, kind of cleaned milk jug. Honestly, I think that has a little bit of extra detail to it, because that means, so shit, where'd the milk go? You know, it means you're kind of extra serious. But either way, that's got to be, if not, yeah. Well, I'm a little torn between what's more important for a workout, being well fed or being well hydrated, right? If you're well fed, you got a bunch of carbs in your system. You simply have a ton of energy that you consume, so you're ready to get after it. But well hydrated, I think, has to take the cake, because I mean, nothing's gonna flow around without those fluids, you know? So I'm more concerned with just how much water I've got, at least like on a daily circulation, because I know that that's gonna have a direct impact, not only just on how pumped I'm gonna be at the end of the lift, but also, you know, how it's gonna feel, right? You're not gonna get an exertion headache if you're actually well hydrated, right? I mean, half of the cause of most of any freaking headaches is just the fact that your brain is kind of spongy, in the sense that it can soak up water and it can kind of get deflated of water to a degree which almost kind of like stretches it inside your freaking skull, and your skull's not going anywhere. So if you get some kind of electrolyte imbalance, or you're dehydrated, then you over whatever, that's what's going on, right? So as far as I'm concerned, as long as you've got at least, I can say a specific number, usually maybe probably 1.5 liters a day for every 100 pounds that you weigh. So if you're a 200-pound dude, 3 liters, I think that's probably about good. If you're a 250-pounder, upwards of 260, 70-pounder, then that's going to put you around a little closer to like 4-ish. A good rule of thumb is just kind of a gallon. But honestly, thinking about it in liters makes a little more sense for me. My typical routine ends up being liter pre-cardio, with caffeine, with whatever, some electrolytes, liter after, and then the rest kind of just spills into the day. Some during training. I like to have a good chunk of water with my pre-workout, just so I've actually got extra fluids at that moment to really fill myself up with. And then of course while I'm training, and then after the workout, plus for dinner. I mean, as long as if I've got a meal, I want a substantial glass or just bottle of water next to me every time. That's typically a good rule of thumb. So if you know anybody who's gonna say, oh dude, man, every time I squat, every time I really just, it just messes with my head, man. It's too much. I'm like, okay, what was your hydration for the day? What was your overall hydration? 2 Monsters for breakfast and 1 Coke Zero for lunch. And then you dry scoop your pre, so you barely drink more than a few ounces with that. That's a recipe for, well, I mean, maybe not absolute instant disaster, but more so just gradual gumming of your gears. I think that's how I'd want to put it. How many of you guys know someone who said this summer was going to be different? You're not going to recognize me by August. I'm going to be a totally different dude. I'm going to make this summer a freaking movie with how locked in I'm going to be. I've heard that, or I've read that in posts 2 or maybe 3 million times, and this isn't as a super kind of cool thing to have to say, right? But I mean, I've seen guys, I've seen different posts and videos and everything else talking about guys working out. I even just heard, one of my buddies in the gym today say that the guy he was working out with before quit. He's like, I don't think quit. You never quit the gym. I think you just take a break for an extended period. But he said, yeah, he stopped working out, right? And I've seen guys where they're making videos, I mean, all sorts of different goals and everything else. I'm going to be the youngest so-and-so, and I'm gonna, I see it a million times. And it always ends up phasing out, right? Not always. There are the outliers, right? The outliers to be kind of looked up to, the ones who actually do what they say they're going to do. But my thought process has kind of always been, skip the middleman, Don't exactly say what you're going to do, because then, I mean, I guess it depends on the dude, right? But then you got this added and strange external pressure of, now you're trying to convince everybody else you're going to do it, and you got to hold yourself to it, which some people may like. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of that. So with everything that I've wanted to do, lifting wise, whatever wise, for me at least, my approach has always just been, all right, I think this will be cool. Let's jump straight to, doing what's going to get me closer to whatever this thing is. And then once I've done it, then you can kind of show it off, because then there's nothing to show off if you say you're going to do it, right? You're, maybe you loved watching Naruto, I'm going to be the next Hokage, right? Nobody believed that guy. Not for a fucking second, right? And once he started doing some shit, everybody believed him, right? So you want to be the guy, you want to skip that phase. You want to skip the disbelief phase, get straight to grind on whatever your thing may be. And then, shit, man, you won't even have to convince anybody that you're going to get after it, because you already do it. You're living it. It's not up for debate whether or not you're actually going to make it happen, because that's the only thing people are going to see from you. You know, just kind of honing into a working out specific context. You don't hear the serious lifters at your gym talk about how they're going to stick to a diet and talk about how they're going to gain X pounds in an off season, or work on their bench, or bring this up, or work on their cardio. You don't really hear them trying to convince someone else that they're going to do it or that they're capable of doing it, because for them, they don't see it as an argument. If you're holding up a freaking glass of milk and you're about to drop it, you don't have to tell anybody, I'm about to make a mess. I'm about to make a huge mess. It's obvious that's going to happen. So I, at least how I look at it is, I like the idea that, if you're seriously into something, be it working out, let's say you're like a total guitar nut, you want to get, like X, I don't know any guitar legends off the top of my head, but whatever that thing is that you want to really put a lot of time and energy into, I like the idea that if you stopped doing it, or that if someone heard that you gave it up, that they would be surprised, because you're just embodying it so, I don't even want to say strongly, just so completely, that it almost takes over at least just a small portion of your identity. Like, you're not gonna shit, like I did all the diving. I was a D1 diver for a year, right? But you're not gonna hear Sam Sulek and think diving. You're not gonna think Sam Sulek and think Rubik's cubes, like I would solve for a little bit, or fishing, right? It's the working out, So that's if you take anything from watching all these videos and everything else, and the repetitiveness of it, and just whatever, I really think kind of taking some value in not getting so attached to like instant gratification on whatever you're kind of working towards, because it's going to take a while, right? There is no overnight sensation. Even even in the context where you might say that, the dude was still working on whatever that thing was for at least years prior. Those are the things that don't get shown off, right? So that's coming from my perspective, it's a little more important, I feel, to actually just make it happen. Don't talk about it, don't bring it up, don't try to explain, just do it, right? Let that speak for itself, because actions are going to speak a lot louder than words. And I feel like just the idea of having to like convince, let's just say, the universe per se, that you're going to get after it, I think there's an angle where you could look at it, or you could look at that as though it's stemming from potentially an internal self-doubt of having to defend yourself, right? It's you're not guilty if you call your lawyer, but in the court of public opinion, that's just kind of basic psychology, right? So if you're trying to convince everybody you're going to get after it, shit, man, I might question just how you're going to act if it's just you alone. You know what I'm saying? Now, of course, there's the outliers, right? Who do what they'll, who say what they'll do. So those are the, let's just say, those are the people to look up to, right? Those are the things where, if I see somebody post something, they say, in 2 years, I'm going to do blank, 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 and then I see it again on my feed, and the guy actually did it. That is nuts, right? Because that is just not seen a lot. It's usually talk, disappear off the face of the freaking earth. But not to get too deep. I think someone who only tries to, just lift as much as they can every set, no matter what, is pretty close-minded. And I think the guy who is always like, oh, you gotta just, be efficient with make the weight heavier by the way you do the reps, and just, control it and don't go. I think he's a bit close-minded too, right? It's this middle ground where, the enlightened character can say, all right, look, I can appreciate the benefits of both approaches and reap the rewards by implementing each in their time. There's a place for crazy heavy bent over barbell rows. There's also a place for light squeezing or kind of burning, seated like crossover cable rows with a wide bar. You know what I'm saying? So either way, I can guarantee within, since it's just back, once I'm warmed up and I, start working set number 1, this lift is not going to take more than 30 minutes. Well, we'll see. Yeah, but I mean, just do the math, right? Let's say, let's be crazy. Let's say 10 sets, right? Let's say you got a 10 set back day. A set itself might take a minute-ish, and that's even kind of like a longer set. 2 minutes of rest in between, then do another one. It's 30 minutes, right? If you've got a 10 set workout and you're in the gym for, an hour and a half, and you're not like done and talking, like you're still mid-workout, that makes me interested in doing a little bit of a what's the word I'm thinking of? A little bit of an audit of just exactly how you're spending your time during these workouts, because some of these guys are going to say, well, if you're in the gym more than an hour, you're not doing it right. I think sometimes that's a little too old school, not a nuanced enough of a take. But I get the sentiment, right? Chest is not supposed to take 2 hours. Honestly, if I tried to do a chest day that was like, a consistent workload that did take 2 hours, I feel like I'd be, I feel like it'd be pumped up and like ready to be done at like let's just say around the 45, maybe 50-ish minute mark. And then anything else just kind of feels like it might be fluff junk. But, to each their own, that's all I'm trying to get at. I have a very different stance. I think, shit. You're better off just sticking to your one routine or workouts indefinitely than going back and forth a million times a minute on doing either full body or this or that or whoever and what. And, not good. Who's, oh crap, I don't remember his name. I was about to talk to a guy who I see on Instagram a lot who I like. But either way, look at guys who are big. I'm not talking gargantuan bodybuilder big. I just mean like these guys work out. What's in common? What are the factors and traits that are in common with dudes who really work out, and you can tell just by looking? They work out a lot. They work out pretty hard. Also, they're probably involved in their diet. Those are the 3. Work out a lot, and then get your macros at least under reasonable order. Right? That's all I can really tell to anybody when it comes to their lifting journey. I gotta admit something. Yesterday, a little bit of a hankering. Decided, what? It's been a while. Have not had 2 single cheeseburgers from McDonald's for quite a while, plus a large fry, and I haven't had that for a while. Like it's been, like months since I had a McDonald's single, and I'm 97% sure it's making my stomach feel weird today, the day after. I'm getting a bit more used to just regular ass plain kind of rice and oatmeal and ground beef, which is good. It does make me feel better, but I don't know how I learned my lesson. That was a good lift, and I am getting very excited about what I'm not going to look years or like levels upon levels crazier this next dieting phase than I did in the last one, but I know it will be a noticeable percentage change after this off season. And this is like maybe it's just because actually no, not maybe, it's definitely because I've never taken myself to that level of leanness before to really see all of that grain and cuts and everything else. Like I haven't been exposed to it before. So now that I have, now that I've kind of gotten a taste for it, it's it's making me itching for it again. But that's kind of in a like 2-phase motivation, making me extra excited about bringing it during these off-season lifts, because I know that is what I've got to do first in order to kind of reach that larger and leaner state. You know what I'm saying? Before somebody can, start chipping away and sculpting a block of marble, you got to move it from wherever the hell they mined it to where it's going to be actually slowly kind of worked on and revealed. Right? And that's the off season. sometimes not as flashy. Actually, not sometimes. Unless you're lifting crazy weights, like to the point where the amount of weights you're lifting is kind of crazy, then that part is a little flashy. But, you know, the actual, just being softer, you are bigger, like in clothes for sure. But, you know, actual kind of posing wise, I'm starting to lean more lean. Now that's, don't take that as though I'm saying bulks are not worth it, just stay lean, because this is coming from my perspective of, you know, years upon years of kind of off seasons to get to a point that I'm kind of satisfied with, right? If you get what I'm kind of saying. So it's not, lean is cool, but it's not exactly my first priority, right? It's, you know, I made this analogy a while ago, I really like it, I end up just thinking like the same thing. If you got a project car, the paint goes on last, right? The detail work goes on last. You know, first you got to kind of build everything up from the bottom first, and then get to show it off later. And that just adds to that kind of behind the scenes, you know, quiet. It's just you working on something before you end up really having anything to show off at all. And, you know, is that the point to be able to show it off? You know, that's kind of another thing to sort of think about. Because I don't think it would be, like, if my only motivation for working out was because I was going to post it and get a certain amount of views on it, like, that would suck. I don't even like the idea of it. You know, for me at least, I'm pretty comfortable, and it took a while to get here. I mean, I said this yesterday with, well, yesterday, but I was saying that with, we were talking about that with Chris and David, where it's like, does the camera help? And then right now we're definitely in a peak of, you know, kind of self-recording and documenting and, you know, just showing off everything working out wise. And I do not see a problem with that inherently, apart from like when guys are doing corny shit in like a normal, totally like regular gym and like making a fuss. You know, that's where Joey Swole comes in and keeps everybody in line. But like just more at like a basic level, it's something to think about, you know, because I don't ever want to feel like I'm distracted from the workouts or any of my values are shifting because of the fact that I'm, you know, showing all this stuff off. I like to think about it as just, these workouts are happening and I get to bring you guys along with me. The only thing I can see is me completely thrashing my quads and hamstrings in not so destructive of a manner. These last few lifts I've been going a little lighter weight wise, just to kind of give myself a little, like, my version of a deload, in the sense that, like, you know, I'm still doing hard sets, like, you know, approaching failure, everything else, like, still bringing it, of course, but, you know, just not trying to curl the 80s or do push downs with like stack plus 3 plates on the side. Just a little more squeezing. As I could tell, last week I was a little more on kind of a heavier kick, and sometimes when I have like a really crazy heavy chest day and a crazy leg day and like really heavy back days and really pulling stuff, I can tell sometimes I'll get little twinges. Nothing like major, but enough where I'm like, okay, that's my sign that I've probably been overdoing it, you know, overall kind of like tension sort of wise. You know, like I'm okay with an arm day that doesn't have a crazy bicep stretch and then a heavy and then a whatever, just because it's like on a lift by lift basis. I don't think that's the most important thing in the world. I think we fall into this trap of like, okay, I need to do a flat bench and an incline bench and a machine press and a pec fly and a cable fly and a dumbbell, whatever, purely because, like, you know, those are all the movements we know. So you're playing a Smash character you never played. You do your side B, side A, regular, like it's kind of classic to spam things. Whereas, you know, I think someone who's got a little bit more of a feel for like what really feels good on any given day is going to be able to say, holy crap, dumbbell curls feel nuts today. I'm used to how good they normally feel, but today it's extra wild. Holy crap, dude. I better just sit here and spam these. You know, and I've done that before. I'm talking an 8 set of curl bicep lift where it's just heavy curls, heavy curls, heavy curls, slightly lighter curls because now I'm getting too weak to lift whatever weight I was lifted before, you know, on and on and on, kind of like that. Right? So not every lift is like that, but when some of them are, I'm not going to complain. right? If anything, simpler the better. You don't have any other kind of distractions to think about, or like having to work in with somebody if you're at like a regular private gym or, you know, anything else like that, or like a regular public gym. You can say, I'm just going to camp out right here for 8 sets. Dumbbells and, you know, cables are a little different. You know, if you want to really just chill out on some of those, usually there's at least enough replacement movements so you're not like hogging something. I probably wouldn't recommend you sit on the dip machine of your Planet Fitness for 45 minutes straight, at least not without letting people work in, or like making it apparent that you're totally cool with people working in, like, you know, don't let me hog this thing, because then you're just a real well, you're a real a-hole. You know, try to hold myself back from dropping that one. But yeah, you know, solid lift playing now, and when I go home, not totally sure. I know I'm going to eat a meal that's going to consist of somewhere around 50, 60 grams of protein, 30 of fats, and then like 100, maybe 150 of carbs. But exactly what that is going to be, I guess I'll just have to see for, you know, once I actually step into the kitchen. And shit, that's almost the same thing as what I was talking about with the gym. You know, I know the basic outline of what I'm going to eat, but I got to wait till I actually get in there and see what's available to, you know, to really end up making that final decision. And not only what's available, but also just whatever I'm in the mood for. You know, as much as we talk about bulking in off seasons as like, you know, it's just for fuel, you're going to make it a lot easier on yourself if you're eating foods that not only you like, but that also, you know, you can actually get down quick enough. If you catch yourself sitting at your plate just kind of picking at it, you know, you're scrolling on your phone for like more than a moment or a few, like 30 seconds or so at a time between like decently sized bites, you're setting yourself up for failure, right? That's a situation that you do not want to be in. And I'm not talking about failure like a good failure like we're used to. I'm talking like, you know, slowed weight gain, slowed off-season progress, slower gains in general, you know. And that's not a situation that I want to be in. That's not a situation that I want to see anybody else be in. You know, and I think I'll just leave it at that. Solid. The only thing that I would have changed for that lift is I wish I was more pumped. And that's a good thing to say. If that's my only critique, that I wish I had more, then that leaves me feeling good knowing I get to go home hungrier for the next one. You know, there is, I kind of went on a little bit ago, I think it was either yesterday or the day before, you know, about how there's a certain stage of working out, kind of once you've got the gist of everything, that in a sense, you're kind of just smooth sailing, right? You reach a new threshold of effort. You're no longer a newbie gains kind of guy. Like you know what you're doing. You work out. You keep bringing it at that same level of intensity day after day after day, and you're still making solid progress, right? That's sort of phase 2. But the trickier thing, and it's almost like a trick question by phrasing it like that, is the fact that there is always another phase. You can bring the bar higher every time, and if you can just do that instantly without needing like a catalyst to actually think that, then you're better than me. You know, I'm still subject to the fact that sometimes you can get a little bit comfortable with the way you've been training and how hard you've been going, and you're like, all right, this is good for now. And it's not as prominent now because I think on the scale of 0 to like really good at working out, I'm definitely getting closer to that really good side, at least for me, and like, you know, what I'm capable of. But you never get there. There's always more to be gained. So what I think back to is, especially when I was a beginner, I'm talking 160, 170, that was kind of when weight was a bit more important. I'm talking like I need to be able to do 225. Like I remember doing 250 for a single. I had Mark record it on my iPod, which is somewhere. I need to go back and find all that. And I was like on top of the freaking world. You know what I'm saying? You know, but once I've kind of got a certain level of comfortability with working out, it's kind of like that graph where it's comfortability or like confidence by experience, right? Experience is the x-axis, confidence is the y-axis. In the beginning, you've never done it, you know, you're not crazy confident. And there's kind of this fallacy where you start doing it a little, and you're a little bit kind of like, holy crap, I know what the hell I'm doing. It's kind of this like diluted sense, and then the more experience you get brought back to a certain reality, and then it makes you want to kind of improve yourself further. You know, so for me, some of those points are, I've had lifts where, you know, I was like, like not taking a rest day because I wanted to take a rest day, just because like it was late and I was busy that day, and like I'm in bed already. I had a home gym at the time, so it's like it was right there. There's nothing stopping me from getting up and, you know, going nuts. And it was like, okay, do I sit here? Do I not? I'm watching Baki at the time. I'm like, all right, what would Baki do? He wouldn't go to fucking sleep. He'd go nuts. Freaking sleep. You know what I'm saying? So, or like I've had lifts where the first few sets of it, I'm like, what is wrong with me right now? Like it just, I wasn't really bringing it. Like I could tell I wasn't like in the zone of focus that I want to be at. And just those little things, kind of like reflections where you really kind of get a look at yourself and think, I could be doing more. I could be going harder right now. What am I doing? You know, or you kind of catch yourself slacking and adjust from there. I mean, that's an incredible kind of aspect of life. You know, there's a version of you where everything is honky-dory every time and there's never an issue. And that version of you is probably a total punk because he's never had to thug out anything and kind of, you know, get over it and be better because of it, you know? So that's, I think that's a good way of thinking, right? Because I mean, I look back and I've had some, you know, I'm not going to get like my whole life story in one car talk post chest. Like I've had some shit go down, and at the time it was not cool, you know, not even freaking at all. But now it's led to where I am. So I wouldn't change it for anything, you know. So it's a really good kind of quote where it's Kevin 𝒮𝓁𝓁𝓁. He's got you know, the video. He's got the Apple kind of corded headphones. Sometimes shit isn't falling apart; it's falling into place, but it might not feel like it at the time. You know what I'm saying? So that's much easier of a thing to say in retrospect, looking back, but still kind of definitely a valuable thought. But I can say, at least today, I'm proud of how much I brought it for that lift, and everything else kind of is in accordance as well. Meals, recovery, sleep. I could be a little more hydrated right now. I should have drank a little more today, and that's an easy fix. Just make sure I keep having that jug on me. Apart from that, just keep going. You know, it's there's a difference between coasting in the sense of just doing the same thing every day, the same workout, the same intensity, the same whatever, and, you know, kind of, well, I mean, you know, who's going further, right? Let's put it like this. The guy who is, you know, riding his bike on a flat plane and just staying the same speed, not really putting much effort into it, or the guy who's got to pedal uphill. Because sure, they're going the same speed. If anything, that guy might feel like he's going slower, you know? But it's not just this, you know, just coasting state of things. Like he's still kind of constantly chipping away at what he's aiming at. If you kind of catch my gist there. But I might just be falling into the, you know, the pattern of thinking that, you know, anybody younger than me is living a very different life. Like your parents are going to think you had it way different than your grandparents, that your parents had it, you know, that sort of thought process, right? I mean, as soon as you know, regular ass Mac computers jumped onto the scene, I mean, we're talking Y2K was a legit, actually freaking concern, you know. But I think it's getting a little extra wild now, you know, to the point where like exerting a little bit of extra control over at least, you know, making sure you're not completely sucked into your phone. Let's wait some bread. I gotta get the glasses back on. But, you know, not being completely sucked into your phone all day freaking long. It's something to consider. You know, I'm not talking about giving yourself parental locks so you only get 30 minutes. That might work. Who's to say exactly? But at least make sure that a small portion, just an hour, you know, maybe even 30 minutes if it's a quick lift, plus the occasional session of cardio gets done every now and then. I've said this quite a few times, you know, there's a certain pretentiousness that I think we have, you know, because we're just as like an organism so smart, you know, we can play on computers and everything else, that it kind of, you know, you give a guy a Nintendo Switch, he's probably not going to want to run around or, you know, do the Stairmaster or sit on a seated bike or work out. He's like, shit, man, this is it, right here. This is the point of being alive, you know. So that's taking it to an extreme, but I guess all I'm trying to say is, you know, make sure you get your hour of play in, right? Whether that's, you know, hooping, lifting, running, cycling. You know, let's say you're one of those guys who likes to, you know, put your suit on and you've got like a 12-pound elite $4,000 you know, carbon fiber bike frame, and that's your thing. Does not matter, right? But as long as you get your heart rate up, that's something I think we can all get behind. Even if you don't want to be a die-hard, insane, massive kind of bodybuilding character, you know, shit, man, you're still a freaking alive, right? You gotta move around. I had my closest close call yesterday. I'm talking, there's a lot of kind of windy roads around here. I don't know if it's just an Ohio thing, but you don't need a stop sign at every intersection. You know, everybody doesn't have to slow down. You know, that's why I've got like sort of, you know, two ways, like this cross incoming traffic does not stop kind of deals. But that's not always registering with people very well, is what I've come to understand. Like I've seen a variety of driving. I'm talking like, you know, Miami, LA, Italy. These guys are driving like there's no rules, there are no lanes on the roads. But I guess this is our problem over here, kind of Midwest. But I'm driving, the road curves. It's like a 120-degree angle. It's nothing wild. I mean, it's like, it's a curve, but it's still this same road. I've got the right of way to just take it and curve to the right. And there's another road that goes straight on, right? And they've got a stop sign. So for me, I look over and I'm like, and if this guy didn't stop, he'd probably run right into me and kill us both. And then less than half a second later, I'm looking next to, you know, both of us going 50, whatever. And luckily, I guess if we were playing chicken, he lost and he kind of bumped out the other side. And he's looking at me like I'm out of my fucking mind. And then he's tailgating me, and I'm like, follow me home. You had a stop sign. That was kind of nuts. But luckily, nothing came of it. No car-on-car impact, and now we can all just go about our lives as we were. And as I is now getting ready to wreck chest. But, you know, it's actually run into these guys who are so much further ahead than you in some way or another. For me, that just makes me more motivated, right? That gets me amped up. Every time I've ever left an Arnold or an Olympia or, you know, anything, and I get to see that show-offy point, the pinnacle of what these guys are working on, that, I mean, I said it every time that that I think when we finished working out with 𝒮𝓁𝓁 down in Vegas, and I was driving back and ready to leave, you know, the Olympia was over by then. And it's those kind of pinnacles, those moments end up just driving more motivation across the board of the community of working out. And then things go quiet for a little bit, right? And then everybody kind of goes back to where they belong. They get back on it, you know, they start clocking in more hours and more calorie tracking and just harder sets and everything else that goes along with it to try and recreate that hype and that just excitement that, you know, getting to see any kind of performance or, you know, just like appearance or congregations of lifters like that. And it's something I never would have expected before, because before I ever came to an Arnold or, you know, anything else like that, I looked at the working out and it was so individual and it was so just, this is my thing. That's the end of it, you know. Like, I'll get hyped up by seeing what other guys are doing, but, you know, at the end of the day, it's still kind of my own responsibility to get after if I want anything out of it, you know. But to actually, you know, get a little bit more of a, I don't even want to say peek, but complete look at the behind the scenes of everything. Just like get a better understanding of the scale at which some of these things get to move around. I mean, it just makes me that more amped to try to like elevate everything that I'm trying to do, you know, however many levels that I can, you know. But that's so that'll be the plan going forward. Not the most game-breaking change, right? I mean, it's still going to be, you know, lift and everything else just like we are, you know, because you might not think it, right? Usually I'm one to say, if you want to look big, I'm talking carbed up, full of food, just physically large. That's kind of the trick. It's a pretty straightforward method. But, don't forget the leanness effect, once my waist starts kind of tapering in, because guys, at least, typical body fat distribution, it's very centered, right? It's kind of right around the core, I'm talking butt, back, sides, stomach. That's pretty much where it's all at. And that kind of sucks, because that's the complete opposite of where you'd want it if you'd want to maintain, kind of like an actual sort of, Dorito looking taper of thinner waist, bigger shoulders, broader legs. So let's just, you can look at it as a drawback, or you can look at it as a motivating factor of, all right, shit, if I lose 10 pounds, sure, I'm going to be 10 pounds leaner, but it's also going to make me look, maybe 10 pounds bigger, because then your shoulders are going to be larger in proportion to, however wide, your midsection is. So as much as it's, kind of just a game of, who's got bigger arms than who, shit, man, it's all kind of in relation to everything else, right? If you put big ass tires on the Camry, it's going to look freaking weird. If you put big ass tires on a truck, totally normal. Makes a little bit more sense. So that's a little bit of the feng shui of making sure everything's at least in decent proportion, because it just kind of all plays together. If you're the type of guy where your legs are seriously falling behind compared to your upper body, I'm talking like you do not hit legs, no question about it. You're a back, chest, shoulders, arms kind of guy, and that's the end of that situation. Yeah, you got a funky look to you, right? We've all seen the jokes where it's a dude who legit has chicken legs, and it could be avoided. I guess you could hide it. You can hide it forever, never take your pants off, just always wear baggy sweats. That could work for a period of time, right? But that's, that's like cleaning your room, but all you did was throw everything under your bed and into the closet, right? It might look good at first glance, but as soon as you start to get in depth and actually see what's going on, things will begin to fall apart rather quickly, So that's my take. And I've taken it even a few steps further, where I used to be like, okay, I gotta hit every muscle group there is. I've never had it directly in my routine, but I've done some neck training before. I'm talking like hold a 10-pound plate on the side of your head and lean side to side, do a front to back sort of thing. Doing tibia raises, that's the front of your shin. I've done a substantial amount of those before, and it worked. I do think that you can kind of add little bits of muscle here and there, but I think as long as you're hitting everything in decent equilibrium, you're solid. No need to freak out and make sure you're hitting your brachioradialis and your brachialis and your bicep major and your tricep minor. Get a pump, go home, eat something, and make sure that's your top priority. Just saw a quick little flash of lightning, and it was very well timed, as I would describe that forearm pump as electric. It's nothing like a chest day, it's nothing like an arm day, but that's and that's where every time we do a forearm lift, this isn't like a weekly thing. Forearms are not in the weekly split. It's typically just thrown in, especially if I feel like I need a rest day. They're just a more chill day before getting into a really heavy lift the day afterward. But I'll always get, it's like, dude, this guy drove all the way to the gym just to hit forearms. Oh God. And to that, I would say, look, man, you got your eyes on the big picture, right? Don't forget the details. If anything, the detailed work of everything else, kind of what adds up to, really make anything cool. I'm not even, like I was about to say make something great, but I'm not even saying great. I'm just saying cool, Like, would any freaking, real old school kind of just monument of any sort be interesting if it was just super plain and simple? Like if it just finished the one key task it was meant to do and nothing else, Or I guess that's not like the best analogy, but all I'm trying to say is, even though it's a smaller thing relatively, and it may not feel like it plays a massive role in the grand scheme of your body and your build and everything else, I think it's and this is a little bit projecting in a sense, but it's like when you watch any of the old, or not old, but like any kind of sushi chef documentaries or any kind of cooking, whatever. It's it kind of starts ground up, cleaning, prepping, not even really getting to the full thing, but giving the smaller details their full attention, and I think that idea kind of scales pretty broadly, right? I mean, you're not thinking, okay, I want to get big, eat a bunch of beef, right? I mean, I'm not saying that wouldn't help, but you got to kind of look at the overall kind of nitpicky things. You don't really, I'm sure that every top Olympia character that has ever been, and every great, probably didn't, look like they were a total beast when they were just sitting weighing out 150 grams of ground beef and rice, or just doing 30 minutes of cardio. Now, obviously, if these guys are nuts, they're gonna look crazy doing anything. But all I'm saying is, like, that's just kind of little crazy inspiring, just day by day kind of task of things that goes along with that greater goal of gains. But if you give those smaller details the same effort and respect you give to like a serious lift or a crazy set of bench or a crazy whatever, you're just setting yourself up for success. I'm not one to ever say that I have a favorite body part to hit. I think if I and then of course I'm going to contradict myself by saying I like chest because your chest is big, your arms are big, your shoulders are a little bigger, but I'm not going to say that objectively I like chest more than arms or I like chest more than legs, because each of them comes with its own benefits and drawbacks. And by drawbacks, I don't really mean drawback, I just mean difficulties. The coolness effect of doing an arm day, especially if you're like on the leaner side of things too. Let's say you got your tank on, you're curling with your arms out. I mean, just doing those reps, you're going to look extra veiny because, I mean, the pressure of actually contracting is going to get your veins going. Or like doing a crazy set of flies, or like you're lifting a bunch of weight on incline bench or something. Like, that's cool, you feel cool while you're doing it. Whereas sometimes with harder lifts, right, legs, leg press, squats, I mean, shit, those are just hard, right? The coolness factor is outweighed by the difficulty factor, right? As cool as I feel doing a crazy ass set of squats, before I actually do it, I'm not thinking to myself like, oh yeah, I can lift this much weight. Oh yeah, this is sweet. I'm thinking, holy shit, this is heavy. Right? Get myself into the zone to do it. So something like legs, it's kind of a delayed gratification of once you kill it and kind of overcome that obstacle of just how hard it was, if you actually push yourself that hard, then you get the reward of, obviously checking out your pump, seeing what kind of sets you were able to manage, sitting in the car after the lift and just getting to think, all right, yeah, I brought it tonight, sweet. I'm not usually one to say like, oh, I earned a meal or something like that, but it's kind of a nice feeling. It says you gave yourself a challenge, you went toe to toe with it, you brought it, now you get to go home, recover, and get ready to do it again. So I know that's not so much of what you might feel like getting a forearm pump, right? But if you still go about that like it's a championship match, at least relativistically, then man, shit, I know for one thing you're gonna get bigger forearms, and in a gains world, or in a gains perspective, that's all we're aiming for, right? I want to be a different guy after every lift. Now, I'm not saying game-changingly different, but I know over the next couple of days, from just hitting that lift along with the food that I'm eating, my forearms are gonna be bigger. They're not gonna be much bigger. On like a lift by lift basis, they're not gonna be much bigger in like just a standard off season. But, and I'm just saying like a few kind of day sort of frame, but I know that they will be slightly bigger. Even if I can't see it directly, I know that that's the path that I'm putting them on by hitting them, getting the pumps, and just really wrecking them. So, I mean, where's the draw to stop doing it? Because if you know something works, right, it's like it's as if you went to a pinball machine, and everybody thinks, oh, it's just totally random, it's my genetics or my metabolism. But if you suddenly find a specific way to smack the paddles that works for you, and it just keeps giving you more and more points, which I would kind of compare getting a good grip on your own ability to train and diet is like, you're kind of clearing the mist of the mystery of making your own kind of gains. Then I mean, shit, all you've got to do is keep doing what you've been doing and don't slow down, right? That's there's a few phases of working out which I feel some are just objectively better than others, and this is more of like a middle tier phase. You really do know what you're doing, you're making reasonable continuous progress. That's where you've built up momentum from learning newbie gains, getting into a routine and a habit of working out, where coming to the gym isn't a chore, it's just what you do and what you're excited to do later in your day or early, if you're kind of an early bird kind of lifter, right? Either way, then you get to a point where that momentum will keep carrying you forward. It's like, what's easier, swimming across the pool from a dead stop tread, or jumping in from the side, getting a running start and diving in, right? So once you've built up that momentum and what you're doing is working, shit, don't fix it if it ain't broke. That's not to say, don't try to improve, but just keep doing what you're doing. And it's not hard to build up that momentum. Like if you're in more of a kind of fat loss sort of situation where, oh shit, man, I'm down 30 pounds over the last 6 months, but it's starting to kind of slow down. What were you doing those last 6 months? Were you tracking everything? Were you hitting your cardio? Were you maybe, kind of continuously dropping calories to account for the fact that your body's going to kind of get used to new deficits? You know the answer, right? If that scale starts slowing down weight-wise, increase calorie, or no, decrease calorie, increase cardio to a degree. I think anything beyond an hour a day, and I'm talking like steady on the bike, 3 mile an hour walk on like an incline, like that kind of intensity, just getting your heart rate up to like a 130, 140 or something. I think more than an hour a day might be overkill, and that's actually from my own kind of experience. And beyond that, if you're tracking all your freaking rice and everything else on the scale, and you're reading the nutrition labels on everything, if you're eating too much. So it's not a question of knowledge, it's more so a question of just execution, right? But that's once you've built up that momentum, you don't need me to tell you that. You know what you're doing. But good forearm lift. I can tell that my grip strength has diminished just from having hit them so hard already. But once they're fully recovered, right? Once I kind of get more glycogen replenished and give them some time to kind of rest and just let them do their thing, right? Guess what's going to happen? Now I'm not constantly testing my grip strength every week or anything, but I'm sure that minor increase in strength plus just exposure to the weight that was required for that pump will play in to having bigger, stronger forearms in the future, right? And that's what I'm here for. So, nothing else to say. I've got a leg day tomorrow, which I think most of my lifts, I almost hit this guy because I did a freaky U-turn, but most of my lifts, I like a full day of food first, and then coming into the gym with a full stomach, ready to really hit it. But with legs, I'm starting to think I might like a little bit of an earlier lift without such a full stomach, just because it's a bit more arduous, more lengthy. It's I've tried to decide if I should do quads in one session, hamstrings in another, or like a 2 a day, or like split it up, and I think the answer is there is no answer. Legs is hard. It's supposed to be hard. That's one of the hard days of the workout. So I can live with that. That's for sure. But I can guarantee I will be drenched in sweat, whether I go to an air-conditioned gym or back to the private space, and my legs will be I'm not sure how many inches bigger. At least 1 inch bigger pumped around. I can guarantee an inch increase, honestly, maybe even 2 inches. But beyond that, might be a little crazy, right? I mean, if you see something grow even 2 inches in the span of like 30 minutes or an hour, I mean, that's pretty wild, right? I mean, when I get an arm pump, that's only going to grow 1 inch, and that still feels like a freaking ton, you know? So don't neglect those numbers.